Cool. So why don't we start with your story? How did you become an entrepreneur? How did you get into the business world?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I lived in Spokane, Washington. I actually during my senior year of college, I went to Ryan Lee's boot camp. It was at the time Ryan Lee was working with fitness professionals. He got out for a little bit. I think he's back working with fitness professionals again. But he had his boot camp, and I was invited out. I got a friend of mine, Eric Cressy, had released a DVD, and I was like, I want to learn how to do this. And he's like, you need to come to this seminar. So I go to the seminar. And I remember just sitting there and like listening to the people on the stage and being like, I could do that, right? And so one of the things that was talked about from there was, these, one of the ways to get into online marketing was to do these interview products where you'd interview a series of experts, package it up as a product, and you would sell it as a product. And there wasn't a lot of products back then, like it was all kind of new, so there wasn't as much competition as there is now. I don't even know if that model would even work in today's world of podcasts and things like that. But I went back and I just said, okay, well, like who's the top 12 people in the strength and conditioning world and what are they experts on? So like Eric was expert on mobility. So I was like, perfect. I'll just interview him on mobility. And then I interviewed another guy on like conditioning and then another guy on like strength training. So like um, I had a series of interviews and basically I just packaged it up and sold it online. Now I didn't know how to do anything, so I paid people to do it and spent a fortune doing that. And I remember I launched the product. All the experts I interviewed like promoted it to their list, and I think I made like $46,000,
Wow.
but like half of that went to affiliates,
Right.
right? And then the I think out of the 26 that was left over, like 20 had to go to the people that had I'd gone into debt 20 grand to get everything built, website, copy, all of that stuff. So I think I profited like $6,000. And then of course like after the launch, I didn't know anything. So I just watched kind of I thought the sales would continue to come in. They come in for like a week and then they just dropped and pretty much went to zero. And so I considered it a massive failure because at the time, like I made 6 grand and that was it. And so I thought I was going to be rich off of it, right? I
Yeah.
heard
Yeah.
all this internet stories. So that led me into wanting to learn more about internet marketing. Okay, well, I made money, but there must be more to that. And so that's when I started diving into it more. But I took a job in Kentucky. I was running a health club and I ran that health club for about 11 months. And during that whole time, I was studying online marketing and figuring that stuff out. And then at that point, the owners of the health club had a consulting firm, and I was like, "Hey, I really want to get involved in the online stuff and help you guys." And so I started helping them, and it worked out pretty good. I was running all the marketing, and we went from just a consulting company to basically we had 12 different companies servicing business to end user in the fitness space, and I was running all the marketing for that. And so that was kind of how I got into it. And then they wanted to go into franchising, and I said, you know what, I don't really want to go that route, and I want to help other people kind of launch their brands online. And so I basically started being a product launch manager for other fitness experts and launched several people. So that was kind of the journey into that entrepreneurship. It was just this desire to figure it out. And then once I realized, like, hey, this is like, it's pretty cool. You can hit send and make money. It led me into, learning the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and piecing it all together.
Now, were you in the fitness world before you did the entrepreneur stuff? I mean, didn't you like have some records and stuff like that? Was that prior to doing your business, or was that during?
Yeah, it's pretty much simultaneous. So the cool thing was the lifestyle of being an entrepreneur fit really well with the lifestyle of being a professional powerlifter because I could travel and train. I could basically set my own schedule and then work when I needed to work. And so it was kind of perfect for me because I would go and I would train in the morning and I train from 8 to 10, and then I'd go home, I'd work, I'd go out to lunch with friends, and then I'd come home, I'd work and have dinner with my partner, and then in the evenings I would work. And so it was like really cool, like, and I think it's what kind of inspired me to really figure it out. Was just not wanting to have a real job. I haven't had a real job since I was like 17.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was like just during that process, it was like, okay, like, well, being a professional powerlifter paid very little, right? Even when I won, I think like the most money I ever won at a competition was like $3,000 or something.
Uh-huh.
So it pays some bills and stuff like that, but it's I'm not like a full-time professional like you see in some of these other sports. So it allowed me to be a professional athlete, and not have a real job, and take the training serious, which was gave me the ability to then become a world record holder because I was able to dedicate everything to it, while being financially secure, as an entrepreneur. So it was an interesting journey as those two kind of grew together, and then of course once I got to that point where it was time to retire and walk away from the competitive lifting and the way I was doing it, I fell back on the entrepreneurship, moved out here to California, and kind of have continued on. So
Yeah, that's cool. So you basically were kind of building your brand in both spaces at the same time, and both the business brand you were building and the powerlifting brand you were building kind of
yeah.
helped each other out. So you kind of managed to build the name in the powerlifting world and in the business world because they both were so intertwined, I guess.
Exactly, and I think that that's like one of the biggest things. And I was just talking about this yesterday, with a friend. But one of the biggest things most people miss is building your own platform, right?
Hmm.
And a lot of people want to have leverage and want to help a lot of people and change lives and stuff like that, which is phenomenal. But they forget that they got to build the platform first. And so a lot of people miss that. Like, and I like to refer to like the rap community because I think you see this a lot in the music industry, but specifically in the rap community, like to get out of their situation, they're the rapper, right? And
Hmm.
then once they have a platform, they're like, oh, okay, I should have my own like label. And so they start a label, and then they find other people, and they collaborate with those other people to build those people up. Now they have a successful label. Then they say, okay, what's next? And now they go into the other ventures, whether it's like 50 Cent with vodka, whether it's like Jay-Z with basketball teams and nightclubs, or clothing or whatever it is. Like that doesn't come until they have that platform and that audience. And I think that for me, I didn't know this at the time, but the powerlifting, being a world record holder, like it opened up a lot of doors for people who wanted to get to know me. They saw me as this guy who was able to achieve these amazing things, and that's attractive, right? People want to be around that. And so it was a foot in the door, and it was a platform, and I built an audience of people who followed me, who like wanted to learn from me. So I got opportunities to speak and do seminars and things like that, and really master the art of speaking and being having stage presence, all through the sport. And so the sport as an athlete allowed me to then turn that on into the business side. And other people wanted to collaborate with me on stuff because they knew who I was, and it just builds that platform. And I think that that's where I always tell people, like when you're trying to build authority, or you're trying to create some kind of influence, like the easiest thing to do is to infiltrate the influencers. Who is it you can collaborate? Whose platform can you go on first to start building your own platform? Like what's your jump off point? Because there's no point starting a blog or something like that if no one knows who you are. No one's going to come and just find you. But if you leverage, like in the fitness space, there's a lot of really big online companies, like T Nation and Elite FTS that have churn out articles on a
Hmm.
daily basis, and so you can apply to be a writer. Magazines as well, like a lot of the magazines in the fitness space, Men's Health, Men's Fitness, things like that, they take contributors. And so I early on got involved in all these companies, right, and I was writing for them. But then that gives me the platform for myself. And so I think that that's like a really key component when you're starting out, is in the beginning you really do have to be the performer.
Hmm.
And the more celebrity you are, the easier the rest of your career is, right? Because you always have that celebrity, and you can always fall back on it. If you miss that, you can have the production company, but it's very difficult, for yourself to have influence, from behind the lens. And I think that the authority, if you look at marketing and things like that, anytime you want an authority, you just throw a celebrity in front of the camera, and all of a sudden it's instant authority. Now,
Yeah.
can you do it without the celebrity? Absolutely, but it's a harder road, and it's not that hard. Like I always call it, like being famous in your own little world.
Uh-huh.
Right? You don't need the world to see you as a celebrity. You just need whatever niche you're in to consider you as the expert. And so I think that's makes it a little easier, to gain that traction, and be in the right places at the right time, and be that person that everyone wants to talk to and wants to collaborate with.
Now, when you were trying to build the actual business side of things, you were trying to build your platform for the business. Were you systematic about it, or was it kind of things sort of happen by happenstance? Like, did you actually have like a game plan going into this? I'm going to build a platform, so I'm going to get on these magazines, get on these shows, do this, get on these speaking circuits, or was it all just kind of windfall kind of stuff coming your way?
Yeah, I'd like to say I'm strategic, but I felt as if I've always believed that if you do the right things and you put the work in, that it all kind of comes together, right?
Hmm.
So I've always had very big visions, and we'll break that into kind of goals and work backwards from that. But in all honesty, like majority of the time, like I was positioning myself with the right people and really driving growth within with other people's companies, and then that naturally brought in more clients. And so it's probably only been within the last year that I've really started to say, okay, like how do I start to build my personal brand to be a lot stronger, and started to be a little bit more systematic with it, and rolling out into the next year. I've got a lot of things planned in order to bring people kind of through a process. But for the majority of my career, even with the lifting, like I always knew what numbers I wanted to hit, and I had the training plan. But it wasn't like I knew, like it wasn't like, okay, I'm going to do this. Like it was very flexible. I like to think of it as the concepts and theories are the most important thing, right? So you
Hmm.
need to know what needs to be done, but the minute details don't matter, right? And so I use this example like in business, like whether you choose to do like podcasting as your platform, like as your initial conversation, or YouTube videos, or whether it's blogging, whatever it is you decide to do, obviously based on your personality, it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't
Hmm.
matter if it's podcasting, it doesn't matter if it's YouTube channel, it doesn't matter if it's blogging. What matters is you do one of those, and that you build the audience there, and then you bring them into, you have something to convert them into, because obviously you got to monetize, right? Now there's lots of ways to monetize too, right? And
Hmm.
so it doesn't matter what you monetize, just the fact that you have to have a monetization strategy, whether it's people paying you for advertising space, or whether it's products, or whether it's memberships, whatever. So I've always had this kind of like, I've always wanted to know the concepts and theories, and I've always operated within that realm, but I've never said, okay, like I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then been fixed on that. And that might be to my detriment, but I've been very happy because I have a very flexible business model where, if I don't want to do something, I'm not stuck to it. And so yeah, so and that's a great question. It's very interesting to think of it like that. No one's ever asked it in that sense, because I really haven't, been super like systematic, and like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. And a part of me sometimes wants to do that more. But then I'm like, well, things have gone pretty good so far. So if I just kind of, dial in the strategies a little bit more, versus worry about the minute details, it seems to always come together, and less stress that way. So yeah, great question.
So let's jump back, because I think I kind of skipped over it. We were obviously having a conversation before we started the podcast, and some of it's blurring together to me from what we talked about before and what we're talking about now. So I think we kind of skipped over what your actual business is now, and how you're making your money now. But what did you do after? So you launched this product. You did all these interviews with people, which kind of helped build your authority in that sense, because you all of a sudden were associated with these people that you interviewed, and you made your $6,000 or so off of that. What did you move on to do after that? Like what was the next part of the journey to where you are now?
Yeah. So from there, I got involved. I was running a health club, and then I got involved with a consulting company running their marketing. And so as we grew, and we had digital products, we had physical products, we had coaching programs. I was running all the marketing, so I was in charge of coming up with the game plans on what we were going to execute, how we're going to advertise, how we're going to launch, how we, who was going to be our affiliate partners, and so that was my domain. And so when I left them and I started launching other experts, basically I had a product launch company where I would work with them. They would have the product, they just didn't know how to get it to the market. So
Mm-hmm.
my expertise came in. Okay, how do we position this? How do we launch it? How do we get other people to promote it? And so I was doing that, and then I met a guy named Yannick Silver, who ran one of the biggest like industry events for online marketing called Underground Online Seminar. And I basically was talking to him, and he had physical products. He didn't have any digital products, right? And so I was like, "Have you ever like thought about like digitalizing your products?" And he's like, "I'd love to. I just don't have the time." And I was like, well, this is what I do for people. Like, why don't you let me digitalize your products? And so, I did that for him. And then he was like, hey, I have this event. Would you want to get involved in it and help me kind of market it and sell it? And so I was like, absolutely. So he actually left. I think he was away with Richard Branson somewhere for like 2 months or whatever. And when he left, like the site hadn't launched yet. And he's like, it's supposed to already be up. Would you manage this? And he came back, the site was launched, we were selling tickets. And so the first Underground, I think it was Underground 7 or 8. It was 8 because I did 8, 9, and 10 with him. But at 8, like it was the biggest Underground he'd had. And he was like, how about we just like work together for this moving forward? And so basically partnered up on the Underground 8, Underground 9 and 10. And so I was in the internet marketing space, so to speak, for a few years. Through that, I also met Andy Jenkins and ran his company for a while he was off in Texas for 8 months shooting. He's a movie producer as well, so he was off shooting his next movie. So I ran his company for that, and so I was in the internet marketing world. And then you just got to a point where I was like, okay, this is great, but like I'm a health and fitness dude, right? And I love all these people, but I don't really care about like the dating industry. And I would really like to just work with people who are in the health and fitness space, whether that's trainers, coaches, whether it's, people with supplement companies, whatever. As long as they're in the health and fitness space, like I get excited more so than anything. And so that led me coming back into the health and fitness space and starting to work with fitness professionals and I call them fitpreneurs, entrepreneurs within the fitness space. And, that's what I've been doing for over a year and a half now. And partnered with several companies and working with different people and doing consulting and stuff like that. So, but what's really cool is every person I help, I know is helping someone else. I have that ripple effect, right? And that's what jazzes me up, knowing the people I'm working with are really changing the lives of their customers, and that fires me up to help more people every day.
So how do you right now with the business you're doing? How do you get the clients? What sort of process do you have to get these fitness professionals that come to you?
Yeah, so because of how busy I am, most of it is referral based, right? And a lot of I've obviously built a big name in the industry and like that, and so I speak at people's masterminds. I'm a mastermind guest. I speak on stage and stuff like that, and that begins a conversation. And then I have a sales process that I take people through. They get on the phone. Walk them through a process. Basically, I just listen to them, and I call it prescription selling, where at the end I prescribe the solution to their problem and say, hey, look, we can do this together, or you can go off all alone on your own. It's up to you. And then we tend to move forward. And so and then I working with people basically mostly in a one-to-one model at the moment. My personal clients, and then of course with the companies I'm involved with, we have different coaching models and masterminds and things like that. But personally, most of my clients come through referral based because I want to work with a certain type of person. For the other businesses, we do everything from Facebook ads to podcasts to social media, and we really have a full scale marketing strategy and funnels and stuff like that built out for them. But as you were saying before about simplifying business models, a lot of times that's how I look at things, like what's the simplest way, and so for me, personal clients is referral based, and I do a lot of things to like really incentivize that, not monetary, but just from treating my customers right and really like becoming a trusted resource for them, where it doesn't make any sense for them not to recommend me. But with all the businesses, one of the big things I really try to focus on, and I kind of saw this with Zappos, and I've studied with Zappos and gone through a lot of their programs and companies like Mind Valley, is that customer experience is really one of the most important things of a business. And so that's really where I try to, like, the marketing is great, but if you don't have a community, like you're going to go for the onesie twosie sales. But when you have that community, it's like evergreen and it's reoccurring, and people continuously spend with you. And so I really try to work with the companies and my involvement on that. That is the community is the most important thing. And then once you have that, the marketing becomes easy. Most of the time, the community takes care of it for you. But if they don't, you can pull testimonials and case studies and things like that because you have such a strong community. And once people get in that, they don't want to leave. So
Yeah.
I try to do the same thing. Even if I'm working one to one with someone, I try to, build a bond with them where it's almost like a family member, right?
Hmm.
And that they're coming to me regardless of whether it's business, whether it's relationships, whatever it is. I'm that trusted resource, and so that's worked very well for me. And I've been able to work with a lot of big companies because of that. And then the cool thing is they always have teams to execute stuff, so we're able to do a lot more. In people's businesses because they have the teams to go away and execute some of these more integrated marketing plans and stuff that you have to be on top of every single day, which if you're trying to do on your own, it would just be overwhelming. And so it's been really cool for me because I'm a small business. It's basically just me in my business,
Uh-huh.
but I've gotten to work and be involved with lots of larger businesses and have teams and things like that I've managed or consulted with and then watch them go execute. So I got to play in the big business world without the stress of having tons of employees myself and things like that. So it's an interesting, parallel to see that different stuff.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool. So let me ask you this: with the building the authority and building your personal brand, are there any has there been any certain one or a couple things that you felt have elevated your personal brand the most, that have had the biggest impact on your personal brand?
Yeah, I think vulnerability is the word a lot of people use, but just being like real and raw with your audience is like so important. Like in today's world, social media is like the highlight reel.
Hmm.
And I was at a mastermind event with a guy named Alan Cosgrove, and I was talking about some of the struggles I was having, and he was like, "You need to be telling this more. Like when you
Right.
present everything." I said, "Why?" He goes, "You've built yourself up as like you're a real live superhero. Like you have superhuman strength. Like you achieve everything you set out to achieve." And he goes, "I know that's not true. Like I know that you failed. I know that like you have weaknesses." He was like, "But your perception in the marketplace is you're this invincible, incredible guy that just, anything you want to do, you do, and you're successful and you've never failed." And he's like, "You need to show people you have a kryptonite, right? You can't be Superman without kryptonite. Like every superhero has um, their point of weakness, but you're not showing it." And so I began to share those stories a lot more, and the bonds that it created with people were just phenomenal. And more so than that, the feedback I get on people saying like how much, like when I share something, it's like I needed to hear that. You don't know how much I needed to
Yeah.
hear that. Thank you. And so the gratitude I got from my audience grew exponentially because all of a sudden they could relate to me on a level they hadn't before. Because they wanted to technically, achieve the things I had, but they didn't see how they could because they were a mere mortal, right? And I when I started to show people that I'm just like them, I have the same thought processes, I have the same weaknesses, I make the same mistakes. I just don't dwell on those. They're not highlights, so I don't share that stuff because I kind of move on as quickly as possible. When I realized that was a huge thing. So yeah, being raw, being honest, and just vulnerable with the audience and not being afraid. To just say things, who you are. And then the other thing is like the being truthful. I think
Hmm.
that too many people like they want to fake it till they make it, and that's just the wrong way to go about it because there's an integrity issue there,
Hmm.
and I think that those being vulnerable and having integrity always, regardless of where you're at. Um, those are very important. And you can make money, but it's like short term, not long term, if you don't have the integrity.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's a big thing. And so it's like, you know, making money online is great. If you're making money online, like and I'm using this example because I know a lot of people that's what they fall to is like, teaching how to make money or teaching how to run Facebook ads, but they've never done it themselves.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like you can do that like if you're making money. If you're running an ad and you're getting people to buy a product on running ads, like there's no issue with that. But if you're not running ads for anyone, you've never run ads for yourself. Like just because you've gone through someone else's course, like there's an integrity issue there. So a lot of times you'll struggle and you can't figure it out. And it's like, well, have you ever actually done that? The other thing I see a lot is like, because I work with coaches, but you have to believe in the process that you're selling as well. And so, I've always had coaches my entire life for every sport, for every for business, and now I have them for like relationships and
Yeah.
for fitness, even though with all my knowledge, like so, I'm a big believer in investing in coaches, and I personally invest in masterminds and things like that. But I meet so many coaches who want to launch a mastermind but don't have a coach, and I'm like, well, you're not in a mastermind. You don't fundamentally believe in investing in that. So why would people believe and invest in you? And they're like, well, it's just part of the business. And I'm like, So I think that like for me, those are the two things that if you do those two things, everything else kind of works itself out. And that's really, you look at the celebrities that are out there, and I hate to use the example of Kim Kardashian, but I mean, basically, it's just you're seeing everything in her life. Miley Cyrus is the same way, right? And you look at these people, the good, the bad, the ugly comes out, and they're not afraid to show it, right? And
Hmm.
that's you can't always be like on camera. You have to show people behind the scenes. It's why reality TV has blown up. And so you don't have to share everything, but that perception that everything is awesome, everything is great, like people see through that and they know it's not, and they might not recognize why they're not connecting with you or why they're not spending money with you, but it's because there's all these red flags. And I'm a trained direct response copywriter. It's probably one of my most valuable skill sets that I have. And it's the same as if you're reading a sentence and it doesn't make sense, it just throws the whole copy off, right? And it
Right.
just like they stop. It stops them, and they're like, I don't really understand. Like what, huh? And then you kind of lost them. There's a good chance they just bail. If they continue reading, they have this confusion, but they don't recognize it. They don't go, this sentence threw me off. It just is this moment where it stops. And I believe that that's the same when people aren't being like being authentic and having integrity and being raw and vulnerable. People sense that. They don't necessarily recognize it, but they sense it and they're hesitant. And so the more aligned you are, the more real you are, the more truthful you are, people just tend to bond to that. And, most people can look at someone and you think to yourself, man, they don't have the skills or the talent like me, or like, they shouldn't. I should be just as successful as them. But then when you look at them, the bond they have with their audience is the difference.
Right.
What they're teaching on the backside doesn't really matter. It's the connection they have on the front. And so the question is, how can I connect more as a human with other humans? And that's something that for a long time I didn't really understand. And I was always looking for tactics and secrets and persuasion things that could like sway people my direction. And when I just realized that you don't need that stuff. That stuff was created to sell stuff that people didn't want.
Yeah, it's so true. It's funny you say that, because I feel like I had sort of a very similar like pivot realization in my business. Was when I've been blogging since about 2005, and I was always kind of like, here's a tactic, here's something you can go use and implement, kind of thing. And when I started blogging about like my personal struggles, and when I started telling people like, hey, I screwed this up and here's what I did wrong, and admitting that I'm a human and that I mess up, that's, I think, when I probably had the largest growth in my audience, was when I started just being real and being relatable, and people saw like, hey, I am closer to you than maybe the perception I used to put out.
Yeah.
And so that's so true that I've found very similar. Now, has there been any sort of like magazines or blogs or podcasts or being on TV or any of those kinds of things that you have found had a big impact, or speaking, or what has been the biggest sort of like tactical thing that you've seen the biggest impact from?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked this, because I think that you can't quantify one individual thing.
Uh-huh.
And so for me, like, podcasting, I don't know how many years it's been around now, but when I'm asked by people if I do a podcast, I say yes.
Mhm.
You know, and I've been on some of the biggest podcasts. I've been on, Lewis Howes's podcast with him, and that, me and Lewis have been friends since before he became, Lewis Howes.
Right.
We both lived in Columbus, Ohio. We were friends, and he started his podcast a few years in. He's like, hey, like, I'd really like to tell your story. I've been on John Lee Dumas's podcast, Entrepreneur on Fire, which is one of the top podcasts out there. But these have all come through relationships I've built and then doing podcasts. And
Mhm.
I never really say no, as long as I can fit it in the schedule. Like I've done podcasts that have millions of downloads, and then I've
Mhm.
done podcasts that are just getting started.
Mhm.
And I kind of look at it like everything builds upon each other, and every time you're putting content out, and every time you're giving back, or giving forward, as Yannick likes to say, you're building that goodwill, and then that kind of snowballs. And so this year, I got the opportunity. I'm speaking at two of the largest conferences in the fitness space, for professionals. So speaking at Fitness Business Summit, which is Bedros Keuilian's event.
Mhm.
I was an attendee at Bedros's first event 10 years ago, and so
Wow.
I'm getting to speak on my birthday as well, which is pretty cool. But I'd be in front of 1,500 fitness business owners, and this is one of the biggest events that's focused just towards the business side. I'm also speaking at the NSCA conference this year, and it's they're the biggest certification board for collegiate and personal training, and there'll be thousands of people there, and neither of those, I didn't apply for them; they've just come. But I mean, I've spoken at events where I've paid for myself to fly there, not
Mhm.
sold anything from the stage. I've spoken at friends' events for them because a speaker didn't show up, and they were like, "Hey, tomorrow can you fill a spot?" And last minute, like, absolutely. And then I've spoken at events where I've been paid to speak, but it's that willingness to always be putting myself there and in that position. And that I feel as if that's what people lack. It's like they don't understand that the daily actions build upon each other. It's the momentum of doing that. Um, and because of that, I get you attract other people, right? And so I did a podcast with Knowledge for Men, and then later on consulted with that the guy who owns it, and then he's gone on and launched a whole business around that. He didn't have any of that when I did the podcast with him, but now, like, the people he gets as guests and stuff like that, like, all of that is associated with my name. So then if someone else who's an audience member or say sees that, and then I get invited on another, so it all leads to one another. So I think that most people, it's like they don't know where to start, right? They're like,
Right.
okay, who should I go and do this for? What should I do? And people talk about the power of no and stuff like that, which is cool. But I'm pretty much like, I like to say yes if I feel like it's serving others,
Mhm.
right? As long as it's serving others, then I'll say yes. And so, like, obviously you have to manage your time, you have to manage your energy, and so I won't just do a podcast whenever. So I'm not getting up at 6 a.m. to get on someone's podcast,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because that interferes with my morning schedule. But if it fits my schedule, and I feel like it's going to serve, and in that, then I do it. And I think that that's what most people don't get. Like, if you could write a blog post for someone else, if you're looking at, well, what's in it for me? Like, you don't know. Like, that blog post could be on their site, and they might not have any viewers, but, like, what happens if that person blows up and all of a sudden they've got a million subscribers, to their RSS feed, and your article's on there, and then what do they do next? And
Mhm.
so who okay, they started this, they blew up, now they're speaking over here, they're speaking at an event, and someone says, "Hey, do you know anyone?" And they bring your name up because you were involved in the beginning. And so that's how I look at stuff. So it's hard to say one thing has built me to where I am today. And sometimes I'm like, man, I still, certain things I achieved. Like, I'd love to be on the cover of, like, an Inc. magazine, an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, right? But then I know people who have been. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm not there yet, but I know people who have been. So I know of the path I can follow. But I really just think it's about connecting as much as you can and serving. And when you
Mhm.
do those things, like, the momentum builds. And when you have the business knowledge and smarts behind it, you can always monetize it. But it's about just, it's not shying away from those opportunities. And I think too many people are like too strategic. Like, well, I don't want to do that because, I don't necessarily, right now, I don't know, I don't have my brand sorted. I've done podcasts where I didn't even have a website up yet, like in the beginning, because I didn't own my name. I couldn't get ajroberts.com. So,
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, I have a WordPress, but I promote, social media and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think it's tough to pinpoint, one thing someone should do. To me, it's like, you got to put yourself out there as much as possible and get in front of as many people as possible. And as long as you're not chasing the fame, and you are being smart about the monetization of it, because sometimes you can do all this stuff, and if you don't have anything on the back end, and you got to have something to sell,
Right.
right?
Right.
But fame doesn't equal money, there's no harm. I've not seen any downsides from just doing podcasts, from speaking as many places as I can. And I started small. I didn't start at these huge events. I just started at speaking at friends' events and things like that. And then I was doing seminars and traveling around doing seminars. And I did seminars with 50 people, like for a workshop, like like doing the powerlifting stuff. And then I had 7 people at a seminar,
Hmm.
but I gave them the same as I would, the 50 people. And I spoke on stage of hundreds of people, and I ran an event with, hundreds of people. And so it just builds, but you got to take those opportunities when they can. You just got to get started. You
Yeah.
got to, start where you can, and that's really the big thing. And if that means paying to be on someone's podcast, like I don't personally, I've never paid to be on anyone's podcast, but I know some business models for some of the podcasts. They just basically, if you want to be a guest, then you pay to be on the podcast. But if that's your jump off point, that's your jump off point, right?
Hmm.
If you can get in front of an audience, then that's going to lead to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I look at it like a snowball, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
As you build the momentum, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then till finally you hit that breakthrough, and it's like, boom, after that, it's effortless.
Yeah, yeah, I'm a big proponent of never turning down opportunities like that. I love the idea, and that's kind of been my philosophy. It's funny because I saw somebody post like this infographic on Facebook the other day, and at the top of it said, "Should I go on somebody's podcast?" And it said, "Do they have at least 20 reviews? Yes, go on their podcast. No, skip it. Do they have at least this many downloads? Yes, go on it. No." And it was like this big infographic about whether or not you should go on the podcast, and I was just like, "This is garbage. Like,
Yeah.
why would you? I mean, you never know what that podcast could turn into. You never know, even if that podcast dies out after 8 episodes, you never know what the person hosting the podcast could go on to do. And they'll always remember the people that gave them the first shot in the beginning. And I think that's so powerful. And I really feel that's how Pat Flynn built his brand. I really feel that's how John Lee Dumas managed to build his brand. Was they never said no to any of those opportunities. And I just think that's so smart. So, in the email scheduling this interview, you mentioned the concept of, I'm drawing a blank. Conscious business.
Yeah.
Conscious business. Tell us a little bit about the conscious business concept.
Yeah, so obviously there's a huge movement right now, and I think it's awesome. It's like, profit driven versus benefit driven, and so nonprofit versus profit, and the old school marketing. And if you watch Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary, it's like, where can we cut money and make as much money for the shareholders as possible. And then on the complete flip side of that, you're like, how do we help people? Like, we don't need to make money. Like, how do we just give, 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 give? Which is a broken model, and the 100% for profit seems to be a broken model as well, because they don't serve. And so now you have this what's called a benefit B Corp company, where it's profits and contribution, right? And they've merged together. And you see companies like Tom Shoes and like all these other companies who are doing things. And you see this in the stores when you go there. And it's asked if you'd like to donate. Round up your bills and donate the change to charities. And so you're seeing all of this stuff come through. But really, like for the way I see things moving forward with businesses and things like that is really being aware of serving others, right? And so consciousness is the coined word for it, right? It's being conscious in business, but really it starts with I call it the 5 C's, and that's kind of expanded as I've started to dig deeper. But it's knowing yourself. You got to know yourself, and like that's the biggest thing. You're on a journey, and you need to know where you are on that journey. And most people need that self-awareness before they really can ever build a great business. And then once you know that, it's like, okay, what is it you're called to do? So, what is your calling, and what is your mission in life? What do you feel you can do? And then next is your creation. So once you know what your calling is, it's like, what am I going to create that's going to live out that calling, to serve others? And so that's it. And then it's like, who am I creating this for? So who's your community, right? From your culture inside the company to outside the company, what's the community and who you're serving, and then lastly, that your communication, which is the marketing. And so to me, that's a very conscious business where you understand that. And when you have that fundamental base to a business, now you can maximize your income, but maximize your impact as well. And that's really what I think people crave, is that transforming the lives of others. And I mentioned earlier, that's why I love to work in the fitness industry, because people are transforming the lives of others, and then that's a ripple effect, because that changes their family, which could go for generations, right? And so for me, like being consciously aware and being awake in business is huge. And like, it's not just about making money. And I think that obviously we know a lot of different people, and some people make a lot of money and they're miserable. And I've seen it so many times. And then I've seen people who, they don't have relationships. They sacrifice their relationships for the money. They sacrifice their health for the money. And so being, having a conscious business is being aware of all of these things at this, understanding that, like, what good is money if you're not helping other people, right? Because money's not attracted to good. Right. There's a lot of evil people who make a lot of money, from drug lords to, scam artists and stuff like that. So if you just want to make money, that's fine, but you're going to be empty, right? You're going to be unfulfilled. And so that's really where this conscious business comes in place. And, the first place I read about it was John Mackey's book. He's the owner of Whole Foods, Conscious Capitalism. And there's a whole community around conscious business and things like that. And so, as I've dug into that, I just say, man, it makes so much sense to me that I just feel like I have to, like, share that as much as I can. And just, if other people just get into okay, what is this and how does that apply to me, and start really thinking about as much as what you're creating and what you're making, but, like, what is that actually doing? What's the community around that? Like, business will become effortless. Like, you don't have to market something when it's a movement, right? And so that happens when you're changing lives, when you're creating a massive impact, and then obviously that's going to lead to something else. And I think the proof is in the pudding, so to speak, with most of the philanthropists of this world, the people who are making the biggest difference. Guys like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, and, like, all these guys, like they didn't just go into that. Like, they built these businesses first, and then they're like, okay, this really didn't. What can I do now? Okay, I have all this money, so maybe I should just turn my focus to trying to change the world. And I think fundamentally everyone kind of wants to do that, and there's no reason you can't start doing that in the business right now. You don't have to wait to start doing that. It won't be on the scale that these guys are doing at it, but there's no reason you can't be, paying it forward as you're profiting, and really you can, so many ways you can do that. Yannick actually has a good book, Evolved Enterprises, he just came out with, that talks about ways to kind of put this contribution side of you into your business. But it's really about, like, not just, giving money to charity, but it's like, how do you better humanity through what you're delivering? And it seems strange, because if you take a topic like copywriting, like I said, you're like, okay, well, how am I bettering humanity by teaching someone how to, like, persuade someone to buy something with words? But in reality, if you have a message and you don't know how to get that out, you don't have a voice, and I can teach you how to present that voice in a way that other people are going to understand it and then invest in that, like, now you have the power to change lives because I taught you that copy, right? And so it's understanding all of this and then putting in a way that grows that. And I think that when people have that fundamental base of their business and they think of all these avenues simultaneously, they're able to create a solid foundation. Because I've seen too many people, grow something and then get bored of it because it felt empty and want to move on to that next thing. I've seen it over and over again, right? Or
I've done it over and over again.
and like smashed it down because they're like, this isn't what I want, burn the bridges. And so, like, I really want to kind of, show, okay, like, if you have this foundation, whatever you build is gonna fulfill you, because you're focused on yourself you're focused on what you're cool to do, you're focused on that creation, putting the best thing you can put out there, the community, serving others, and then the communication, like presenting it to the world.
Hmm.
When you have that foundation, it's a pretty solid foundation to build something great on. And I think that that's really what everyone craves: growth, continuous growth. And the cool thing is, if you're not just focused on money, now you have a lot of different things and a lot of different areas you can grow in. And so you're not just tracking yourself on the dollars in the bank, right? You might
Hmm.
make the same money, year 5 of your business to year 6 of your business. You might have the same income, but your staffing has doubled, right? So your
Hmm.
take home's the same, but you doubled staff. So now you've, changed the lives of twice the amount of people by giving them a job, which in turn then allows you in year 3, of that growth. Like now you can actually double the people you're serving or quadruple the people you're serving because you have the infrastructure to do that. So these are the things. I'm a very big, growth entrepreneur. I kind of get the lifestyle entrepreneur stuff was cool. And then I'm like, well, wait a minute, like that's not really having the biggest impact and change and serving. So I'm a very big growth entrepreneur, and I feel as if like, true fulfillment is going to come through from just serving as many people as you can. And I think that we see that, and we see the examples of that over and over again. There's enough clues out there that that's the direction we should be going. I just think, well, we don't have to wait until we've made it to be able to give back and to serve and to do things for others. Like even if it's just a small contribution, like you can partner with a company like Pencils for Promise, right, and get houses built by having a team of people, like different business owners, all contributing to a fund that then they're going off and building homes. And so you didn't build the home yourself, but you contributed to that. And there's just different things like that. So to me, that's what really excites me in the business world is being able to help people build these conscious businesses. And whether that be gym owners, whether that be online entrepreneurs, like whatever it is, it's about them having that thought process, and so that they are looking at having an impact versus just an income, and fundamentally changes the conversations.
Yeah. So if somebody has like an existing product, let's just say like they sell an info product online, for example, and it's kind of already an existing business, they've already built it, it's already selling, making money. How would you recommend they sort of approach this? What sort of things can they do to approach this new way of thinking in their existing business?
Yeah, I think if we look at the creation, right? So obviously, if you've created something, it's because you had a passion around it. Most of the time, like most people aren't successful if unless they're passion behind it.
Right.
But the first thing is look at that creation, and is it like the best you can do? And I look at the iPhone, right? It doesn't have to be the best today, but do you upgrade it when it needs to be upgraded? I think that's a very important thing to realize, that you don't have to have a lot of things, you don't have to have a product suite, you can have one product, but are you continuously improving that product to make sure the very best is getting into the hands of your audience? And the second thing would be like, what are you delivering to that community? So what's the customer experience?
Hmm.
Just when you collect money from someone, what happens after? Do you just send them the product? Is that it? Do you follow up with them? Is there a series of things to make the consumption of that product better? Especially if it's an info product, like what is it you can do to build a better customer experience, right? And a
Hmm.
lot of that it doesn't have to be a lot, but just like, um, calling them and letting them know that their order is shipping or whatever. There's little things you can put in play. Not everything is feasible, obviously, but like even if you're sending an email, letting them know thanks for your purchase. We've received it. Like some people don't even have those
Yeah.
emails set up, right?
Right.
So it's looking at that experience and then the people you work with as well. I look at it like you're in your company. Like if you're the owner of the company and you have employees or team members, as we like to call them, like you're responsible for their growth, right? So you're giving them a job, yes, but you got to remember, like most people hate their jobs, so you don't want your team members to hate their jobs. So as a leader, you're as much responsible for them, with their job, as you are for them in the rest of their life, because they're basically putting the most amount of time with you. So you should be helping them. And so if you have team members, it's like letting them know they're appreciated. And to be honest, I always recommend the Five Love Languages book, and I think they have a business version now. But like understanding how to communicate with your employees and team members, because like some people's love languages are different, and so the way they receive appreciation is different. Like a text to one person might not mean anything to someone else, right? Someone else might need a card, like a physical gift that's to be like, oh wow, they really appreciate me. So understanding, the people you work with, and whether they're virtual, like, that they're still human, so
Yeah.
they still appreciate, like, being appreciated. Um, and then obviously in your marketing, like you've got to look at the level of people you're talking to and attracting, and there's different ways, and we could go on forever with marketing, but are you basically promoting this run from hell, or are you promoting this like run to heaven, right? And so, a lot of people, the scarcity, the doom and gloom, the fear based, like that to me is just, I mean, there's another way to do it. And so when you look at your marketing, like, are you really selling people on false truths? Like, are you selling them on, the magic pill, so to speak? And if you are, like, you're basically attracting very low level conscious people that kind of believe in pills and potions and magic, and they think there's a one click button and all of this stuff. And it's if it's not true, like, yes, it gets the sale, but like you should be honest with them, right?
Yeah.
Like, if and that's really goes back to the honesty integrity thing, like, you know, I see you see it in the fitness industry all the time. It's like, take this pill and you'll lose weight, and then in fine print it's like, combined with good diet and exercise.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Just say that in the first place. You know what I mean? Like because the combination, I call it the trifecta. Like supplements, diet, and training is a trifecta. That's what gets you the results. If you do one and not the other, like you can just diet, but you'll be skinny. You won't have the muscle. You can just train, but you're not going to lose the fat if your diet's crap. You can take supplements and it does nothing. You put those three together, now you have like it's almost a concoction, right? Same with anything we want to teach, right? And so you walk that fine line. You have to make those decisions. But like I said, if you have an amazing product and you have an amazing community, and we'll take the iPhone for example, like Apple, cutting edge product. They have community of people that are just passionate about them, and then when it comes to their communication, like they don't advertise the way other companies advertise, right? They
Hmm.
simply present their product and what it does, and that speaks for itself. They're not saying we got a better camera than this, whereas all the other companies want to do that. And so, that's the way I look at it, and that's how you can kind of bring this conscious business model into your current business. Is just looking at where you're at and being like, you don't have to do it overnight. And then and from the simplest standpoint, from the contribution standpoint, like, you can give a percentage of what you make. You can, like on checkout forms, you can have customers donate. You can team up with certain organizations that you believe in and just cut one check a year, like whatever you want. Like, it doesn't have to be, this massive integration, but, you know, the better thing to do is, where do you get involved, right? Versus just, giving money or something like that. It's like personally
Hmm.
getting involved. But again, these are different phases, and you got to start where you're at. But that's really like from the overview looking at it. And before you do any of that, I would probably dive into yourself first, and who am I and where am I? And if you haven't taken personality tests and Strength Finder and Colby, and start figuring out who the heck you are. Why do you think the way you think? Why do you process the way you process? And get some understanding there, and then dive into the rest of it, because that'll give you a lot of answers, and you'll probably figure out the rest on your own. So I probably should have started there, but
That's so
like,
good. I feel
yeah.
like I could probably go another like hour with you on all this stuff. But with respect to your time, I've got two final questions I want to ask. So the first one is: what's your biggest book recommendation? What book do you tend to recommend to the people the most?
Well, I read a lot. As you can see behind me, I got a stack in front of me here. So I can't give like best of recommendations, because it depends, right? But I got asked this question this morning actually in a mastermind group: what were my best books of the year,
Okay.
right? So for family, and relationships, the Byron Katie's Loving What Is, right? So that was my recommendation there. For fitness, The Way of the Seal. because I'm more of a mindset guy with fitness than anything. But The Way of the Seal by Mark Divine. He has an Unbreakable Mind as well, which is a good book. But that was my like fitness body recommendation. For financial in business, it was Bold by Peter
Oh, I love
Diamandis.
that book.
It
Yeah.
just shifted my entire thought process on moonshots and just actually what could we achieve, and that's where a lot of this actual beginning phase of the conscious thought process came in. And then for what have we got? Fitness, finance, family. Oh, for faith, spirituality, and personal growth, transcending the levels of consciousness by David Hawking. And essentially, it just talks about different vibrational levels and how you act at different levels of consciousness. And it's the first time you can read that and you're like, oh yeah, like when I'm angry, like I'm like really low vibration and like I don't attract, and then when I'm super happy, and you start to see the difference, and so you can recognize that. And emotional mastery is a huge part of business success. And that was one of the great books I read this year.
Awesome. Yeah. I've read 2 out of 5. I've read Bold and The Way of the Seal, both great books. So I'll have to pick up the other ones.
Yeah.
Cool. So my final question is, where can people go to find out more about you and your business and get more from you?
Yeah, so ajroberts.com. I'm AJ Roberts on Facebook, Instagram. I'm AJ Roberts 33 on Twitter because they won't give me my name. No one uses it, but someone registered and I can't get them to link. So I'm waiting till I'm trying to get that verified, right? But I'm not a big social media like user, so like my audience. I actually had a huge audience on Twitter. Back when you could gamify it, and then I was like, "This is all fake," and just deleted the account and started over. So, so like I'm not, like I said, I'm famous in my little world, but I'm not celebrity famous enough to get that blue verified. I'm working on Facebook, and once I get Facebook, I'm going to try to influence Twitter to give me my handle.
Nice.
But yeah, AJ Roberts pretty much anywhere. AJRoberts.com.
And that'll kind of link people off to everything you do.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time and hanging out with me today.
My pleasure.